I've spent most of my life training horses. My grandfather was a very big equestrian, and I hung out with him all the time. And we did everything that we possibly could relate to horses. One of the things I was really very distraught about was that there was a lot of research going on with horses and PTSD that was not done well. If you have PTSD, we understand what's going on in the brain that makes it happen. And basically the mechanism is a short circuit. Under very stressful, fearful, frightful conditions, whatever you have, traumatic conditions, the brain basically takes all of the normal cognitive processing, all of our rational thinking, and shorts it out and says, I don't want to take the time to get that handled that way. So what happens is it goes over towards the very reactive side of the brain, the amygdala and the hypothalamus and so on, and it gets stamped, if you will, with a different kind of signature. So it gets stamped in a way that it's not a memory. It's not like we're going back and saying, this happened to me and I remember what it was. It's almost like we're reliving it because it's not quite processed the way a normal memory would be. PTSD is just that the memory is not entirely recollected. The memory is sort of almost relived. And that's what makes it different. And so for PTSD, we have to do a lot of things to try and help people get what the triggers that set them off, that set those memories off. We've had a lot of trauma amongst first responders. But then that's not that different from the trauma that we see amongst the military. I'm a veteran and served in for 3 tours of active duty and in Desert Storm. And everybody's experience is different, but that doesn't mean that we don't have a commonality of saying, when I get into this particular environment or I see these triggers, something happens to me. I'm a pretty hardcore scientist. I mean, I trained at Harvard Medical School and I have an NIH fellowship and I've been doing research for 30 years. And my wife is a clinical psychologist. So we did a lot of work together on equine assisted therapy. And so we actually linked up with Columbia University. And Columbia University was very interested in PTSD with veterans, which is near and dear to my heart. So I said, let's take a group of veterans, let's put them through a program that's incredibly recipe so that anybody could reproduce it. And so one of the things we found was that there were profound changes and improvements in people's PTSD scores and depression and quality of life and et cetera, and the first round of the pilot study showed that the effect lasted months after the equine therapy was over, which was what we wanted to see. Horses mirror what you are feeling. So if I'm nervous or I'm anxious, that horse is going to pick up on and say, well, wait a minute, that predator that I'm partnering up with over there is not feeling right, so something must be off. And then the horse gets nervous. So one of the things that you learn as you work with horses, and especially a valuable thing if you train horses, is you learn that if you want the horse to get quiet and calm, you have to become quiet and calm. And you can't react. It's all physical. You see what's happening. You can see that as you calm down, that horse comes towards you. You can see that as you react, the horse moves away. So I can say, are you calm? Right? And I go, well, you're not calm enough that horse is coming towards you. so let's get that quiet. So the very first thing you want to do is you want to clear your head and say, the only thing I'm focusing on is how I and the horse are feeling together. And so it's an excellent method to help veterans with PTSD learn to calm themselves when they're in an event where they have a trigger. So what we teach them is, wait a minute, if you run into a trigger situation, you do exactly what you did with a horse. You just don't react. You let it, you tell yourself, I am not going to put energy into that situation. I'm going to take energy out of that situation. What the horse is listening to is the tone, but the horse is feeling the energy of what you're trying to emote. The horse is a right hemisphere experience, like meditation is a right hemisphere experience. What happens when we meditate, when we get into mindful spiritual practices, every single spiritual practice is designed to try and take the inner voice, which is coming from your left hemisphere, and shut it up so you can connect. The left hemisphere has language, and it is obsessed with itself and its identity. Okay, the right hemisphere is mute, but it communes with everything. It connects with everything. And I can say the more you repeat that practice, the more you're going to be able to access it outside. So it might be if I do it one time in the round pen, yeah, it's nice, it helps. But you know what is especially good is the repetitive exposure, where I'm bringing up that discipline over and over and over in a whole host of circumstances. So the second study, we did the same thing, but this time we did brain imaging first, before we did it, and then we did brain imaging after we had finished the equine programming, which was 8 weeks long. And what we found was that we had, in fact, made it so that the amygdala was not firing nearly as actively. We had actually turned down the amygdala, and that seemed to be the underlying explanation of, well, why were veterans with PTSD better after this 8-week exposure to horses? This study was, 20 years in the making. I mean, we sat there and advocated over and over and over again, you got to get serious if you're going to do this. It was Department of Defense, there was the MAC Foundation, there was the Thoroughbred Association out of Kentucky. But, a lot of people came together to say, let's try and make this happen. I think the real power behind those studies is that it sort of allows for the whole equine-assisted therapy and learning community to sort of say, I now have a scientific foundation validation from which I can move and talk to people about why is this working, why are we offering this. The study provided the research validation that these techniques help people with PTSD, so that when an outfit like Belvoir comes along and says, I want to reach out and help our first responder communities, the studies say basically, yes, you can change the way their brains react. For me, horses have been the greatest teachers I've ever had. And I never ceases to amaze me what I keep learning from them. I call them a divine gift, because to me, that's exactly what they are. They're a way for me to connect to the universe and to the world around me, and it is the message that the universe is listening, okay? You may not have been hearing it, but it is listening to you. The notion of let's cooperate as a herd is very valuable. The herd is out there waiting to say, are you listening, Are you ready to make a switch?